fasting is your superpower at this point in your life. It honestly is. Our bodies were created to go periods of time without food and then feast. So this feast famine carb cycling is key for women because we don't want to starve the body. We understand that just chronic calorie deprivation does turn down our metabolism.
Right.
It's not helpful. But if you remind your body that you're not starving by doing some carb cycling, and you really eat the right foods when you are eating, then fasting becomes really powerful and transformational.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now, here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson. Today, we're joined by Dr. Tabatha Barber, who has dedicated her life to giving women a voice and a choice when it comes to their health and well-being. Overcoming struggles as a young girl, including self-esteem challenges and the hurdles of being a high school dropout and teenage mother, she emerged as a successful physician through faith and perseverance. Her unwavering commitment to women's health is evident through her triple board certifications in obstetrics and gynecology, menopause, and functional medicine. As the driving force behind her thriving medical practice, Dr. Tabatha and her team provide compassionate support and care to women nationwide. Through the Gutsy Gynecologist show, her Gutsy Gyne supplement line, and her best-selling book, Fast to Faith, she shares insights into the importance of gut health, hormone balance, mindset, and most importantly, nourishing the soul to truly heal and become whole. She's a beacon of light in a sea of medical darkness. In today's conversation, we are talking about the power of fasting and faith and how Dr. Tabatha's process can help support women of all ages regain their clarity and zest for life. Dr. Tabatha, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Julie. I'm excited about our conversation.
I am as well. And I would love to get a little bit of your backstory for listeners because you really have been pioneering this field of functional gynecology, which is so important. We were just chatting and I thought, oh, let's just hit record. But share a bit of your journey because I'm guessing when you were a little girl, this wasn't the direction you thought you'd be going in.
Not at all. Oh my goodness. I liked school because my friends were there and I got to talk to them. Like I lived in detention in Saturday school because I couldn't pay attention or shut up. Like I just loved the social aspect of it. So I really struggled with school and I thought I was going to be a rock star. That was my main jam. I was going to be in an 80s hair band. And in 11th grade, I got pregnant and my life changed drastically. And I realized that, dreams of becoming a rock star probably weren't going to happen. I need to focus elsewhere. And unfortunately, I was in a position where I ended up having to be on Medicaid and food stamps and WIC, really depending on assistance to survive. And I had a grumpy old doctor assigned to me. He made it clear he was making 22 cents on the dollar to take care of me. And so a lot of things were done to me. Nothing was explained, pills, procedures, lots of pelvic exams. And I had a very traumatic delivery. After 3.5 hours of pushing, he ended up using forceps to deliver my baby. And it wasn't until way after the fact that I realized that he was a family practice doctor and not an obstetrician. And that's why I couldn't have the C-section that I needed so badly. And to top things off, I ended up in a hyperthyroid storm after delivery. So my heart was racing. I was sweating, I was dropping all kinds of weight while trying to nurse a brand new baby at 17. And it was a disaster to say the least, right? So
Oof.
it wasn't until many years later that I really figured out everything that I had gone through and understood it. But at the time, I'm in the labor delivery room crying and begging for a C-section. I just had a come to Jesus moment. And my God downloaded to me, like, you have to get your life together. This is unacceptable. You have to use your voice. You can't let people just do whatever to your body. And I really didn't know what all that looked like or meant for me, but I
Sure.
just knew that I had to like take steps forward to change. And I went back. I had dropped out of school, went back on my GED, went to a community college, thought I was going to be a nurse, ended up going to medical school and becoming a doctor. And it's just been my life's passion to give women a voice and a choice when it comes to their health, because I had no idea that a lot of the stuff that happened to me shouldn't have happened, that there was other choices, that there should have been options, there should have been informed consent. We should have had discussions about, well, here's what we could possibly do, here's the other options, and then actually be part of that decision-making process. And so that is just really important to me at this point in my life. Like, women need to know what they're signing up for or not signing up for, right? And if you
Sure.
don't have true informed consent, then it's not a real patient-doctor relationship. And unfortunately, I thought I learned everything when I went to medical school, right? But what I learned was, as a conventional doctor, I only had a couple tools in my toolbox. I could perform surgery, because that's what
Yeah.
gynecologists are, we're surgeons, or I could offer birth control pills. And so when I was providing informed consent, say you signed up to do surgery for your endometriosis, I would say, here's your options: birth control, medical menopause with a medication, or surgery. I had no idea that there was this whole world of health and wellness, and that you could actually heal endometrium, diet and lifestyle and herbal remedies and all of, healing your gut. So I wasn't truly giving informed consent, right? Because I didn't know all of the options. And so now I'm just here to explain to women, like, keep asking questions. There's more to the story than probably what your doctor is offering you. And really excited that women like you and functional providers are showing up and they're educating people, because we just don't know.
It's so true. I was just saying that before we hit record, right? In our little bubble, we know. And then we have conversations, and I will qualify for you. Physicians are doing the best they can with the training they have. And it's just a matter of, like you said, you needed a bigger tool belt. And that is why I love having these conversations, because I just can't even imagine, first of all, I do believe we go through things, to create impact in the future. But I cannot imagine, I think men and women in general, at least historically, were disempowered in the Western medical system. We were just told, like, listen to the doctor. The doctor knows everything. And so I can't imagine going through what you went through as such a young girl. And so thank you for listening to that download and, changing the conversation and helping women of all ages. I feel like it is the same thing for women like me in our 50s. So we have, like, kind of the childbirth. I guess there's a few phases. You've got adolescence, where hormones can be crazy, and usually it's the pill that gets thrown at you, and then your bearing years, and then menopause is another, like, well, that's just how it is, nothing to do about it. And so thank you for women everywhere for keeping the conversation going and allowing people to access the education to empower themselves. Because when they learn from you and then they go to the doctor and that's not the conversation, hopefully they'll find another doctor, right? So
Right. Well,
Yeah,
you made a really important point that we're just asking the wrong people. I
right,
was a surgeon. I did 4 years of a surgical residency, learning how to do a hysterectomy 4 different ways, and fibroid surgery, and colposcopies, and delivering babies, and C-sections. And so we don't study the intricacies of hormone balance and
right,
how the gut and the adrenals and the thyroid impact all of that. Like, I had to go on and study functional medicine and anti-aging medicine and do all this other stuff. So we call OBGYNs women's health experts, but they're really not experts when it comes to hormones and what's happening, at a comprehensive physiologic level. I
right,
am there to like save your life, cut things out that are bad,
right.
bring babies into the world. It's just we're asking the wrong person. I got minimal training about menopause and
Right.
those types of changes. Like I said, my tool was birth control pills. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we know there's a lot of issues with that. And so it's really important for women to understand that there's so much foundational stuff that can shift their health that they can do on their own. They might want a
Right.
coach or a guide or a functional provider if you've already been diagnosed with thyroid disease or you are transitioning into menopause, things like that. But if you're not doing the foundational stuff, none of that matters. And I see that in my clinic every day. Women come to me like, I need hormone replacement therapy. I heard it's safe to take. Now let's do the hormones. But they're eating the standard American diet.
Right.
They're stressed to the max. They're sitting at their job all day. They're not dealing with their messed up relationships. There's so much stuff that's underlying
Yeah.
in destroying their health, and that has to be addressed.
Absolutely. Amen. It's that perspective of the magic pill, right? They're showing up and they're like, you fix me. Like, you give me that magic thing. And we know that that's A, not empowerment, and B, it doesn't work. So I love you know, the reality of your approach is amazing. And we're whole humans. There's never one
Yes,
thing. So I love
exactly.
that. I want to circle back to your download that you got and to faith, because I already told you I would love to have you back for a second conversation, but fasting and faith, like this is what I think of as just inherently Dr. Tabitha. And it's an important conversation. You hear so many different things about fasting. I understand the importance of faith in healing and living well. So let's dig in a little bit of like, why the two together? How did
Yeah.
that come about?
So, when I've gotten many downloads from God, like he is definitely directing me and guiding my life. And I think it's because I've always been open and ask him to do so. I really just am a follower of Jesus. So that's my jam. If that's not your jam, that's cool. That's just, who I am. And so, I told you I figured out how to get my GED, go back to medical
Yeah,
school, do all the things because I thought that's what women needed from me. And so here I am, an attending physician. I'm out in practice, working 100 hours a week, just killing myself literally. And I was destroying myself. So I realized this is not what God has called me to do. This is the mess that I've created and I have been brainwashed into this broken medical system. And so I got to the point where I had a back injury. I couldn't function. I gave in and I had sick surgery. I took 6 weeks off to heal. And my third night back on call, I re-injured and I couldn't move. And that was Christmas Eve. That was pretty stressful. So for the next week, I was lying in bed, really couldn't move. My husband's carrying me to the toilet, essentially. And about the third or fourth day, I realized I hadn't really eaten. And, I'm laying there talking to God, like all the typical things. Why did you do this to me? Why would you forsake me and betray me. And like, why am I struggling? This isn't fair. All the typical victim mentality things I'm saying to myself. And he was like, you just need to read scripture. You need to stop feeling sorry for yourself and figure out what's going on. And what I realized was my body was innately trying to heal itself. And then I started thinking back to my surgical training and the fact that when I would do surgery on patients, like this is what I learned as an intern. You write an order to the nurse and PO. You don't feed my patient until I tell you to feed my patient. And it's because when we eat, we use a lot of resources just to break down and digest foods and do all those processes in our digestive system. And so when you're trying to heal, you need those resources for healing. So you don't need all that digestion happen. But second, there are mechanisms that come into play. Our body starts producing healing cells. And, it's the best are autophagy, and that kicks in around, the 18 to 20 hour mark where our body starts creating these little cells called macrophages that go around and eat broken cells and DNA, and they start cleaning house throughout our body. I think of it like Pac-Man. The little guy goes around and he eats all the stuff up. And that's what starts to happen when we abstain from food is our body goes into this deeper healing process of cleaning things up. And so, unfortunately, the standard American diet has us eating from dusk until dawn. We have food available 24/7. Is, we can have a pint of ice cream in 20 minutes if we want. Like there's no stopping us from eating. And it's really hard on our pancreas. We're constantly pumping out insulin. We're tapping off our blood sugar. So it's like constantly elevated. It never gets to come back down to normal range because as soon as it starts to drop, we get hangry and jittery and irritable. And we've been trained to like feed that hanger.
Right.
So we are just stuck in this super sugar burning mode of like, carbs, more carbs. And we don't ever tap into our fat burning mode to burn fat for fuel and make ketones, which is a much cleaner fuel for our brain and so many things. And so what I really realized was that even though I was trained as a surgeon, I wasn't the healer. I was, that was ingrained in me. Like I'm healing these people, I'm helping them. But when I make those cuts, I cut through your skin, your fascia, your muscle, I do all that stuff, and I sew you back up, I do not heal you. Your body actually does the healing. Your cells grow back together. Your skin and your muscles, they all grow back together. And so we're giving the medical system way too much credit when it's actually, in fact, your body doing so much of the work. And we just need to get back to supporting your body to be able to do that process and removing what's impeding it or preventing it from doing that process. And so that's, where Fast to Faith came from. I was like, oh my gosh, all the stuff I have learned, I just have to share with women. They need to know how their body works, how to enhance it and stop interfering with it. Because what I've seen over all these years of practice is women are in a constant fight with their body. They think their body's failing them. They hate their body. They're mad at it. I hated my body. I was like, why can't you function with no sleep and on donuts and M&Ms and coffee? Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you in so much pain? And I hated my body. And my poor body was just crying out, asking for help. And I wasn't listening. And that's what's really happening for so many women is they just need to get back in tune, learn how to listen to what their body is telling them, and then work together and love it back into health and wellness. And so fasting is just a piece of that. But when you incorporate the faith and you ask God to come on this journey with you and you're like, I don't have the strength for this, like my willpower lasts until the cookie shows up. If you ask God to give you that strength, you're going to be unstoppable. Like you're going to be able to do everything you're called to do. And it's so empowering just watching women transform when they actually put all of this together, the functional medicine, the fasting, and the faith, like boom.
Boom is right. Woo. And it's amazing, especially for our audience. It is, to me, always the first step of healing. Anybody dealing with chronic pain, chronic illness, autoimmunity, any of the things, right? We do, their overtime becomes, I think, as a survival mechanism in the beginning, a disconnect, right? I was a single mom and in lots of pain. I had to ignore that pain. I had to disconnect from those signals to get through the day and take care of my 3 kiddos. And there was no way to heal until I reconnected and realized, my body and I are on the same team. I am not understanding the message it's trying to give me. I need to listen and integrate back in order to heal. So thank you for highlighting that, because I know literally everybody in the audience just leaned in and was like, yep, that's me. Whether it was me, is me. I really truly believe that is such. It's the key to beginning your healing journey. So I hear all the time questions about, I'm 55. I mentioned, earlier before we hit record, I had a hysterectomy and oophorectomy 4 years ago. So here I am, postmenopausal, 55-year-old woman. Is it safe for me to fast?
Yeah. Fasting is your superpower at this point in your life. It honestly is. That is how we were created to function. Our bodies were created to go periods of time without food and then feast. So this feast famine carb cycling is key for women. That's what makes my program, because we don't want to starve the body. We understand that just chronic calorie deprivation does turn down our metabolism.
Right.
It's not helpful. But if you remind your body that you're not starving by doing some carb cycling, and you really eat the right foods when you are eating, then fasting becomes really powerful and transformational. So the key is to focus on the food when you are eating. So in the book, I talk about faith foods versus Franken foods, which are like all these foods we've created in the lab. They're not real foods. Like if it didn't grow out of the ground or have a mama, then it's a Franken food probably, because its process is just to the degree, like what's added, what's changed. Right. But if you can start to understand that, and that it's affecting how you feel and your ability to fast. So I love eating healthy fats, protein, vegetables for fiber. Like that should be your focus at every meal. And then fasting is going to feel good because you've actually nourished your body, and you can really get to a point of thriving and controlling your weight and having so much brain clarity and so much energy. It's just so many good things. Women often complain that they can't sleep. They're waking up in the middle of the night, and it's almost always that they're drinking alcohol in the afternoons, evenings, or they're eating desserts. They're elevating their blood sugar. They're not getting that fat and protein in their diet. And so it's just little tweaks like that can make such a huge impact on how you feel and how you function. So it's really important to focus on what you are eating when you eat.
I've heard that so many times, oh, well, I fast, like people think if they just fast a day a week, that, balances out the crap that they're putting in their system. And the reality is that what the Franken foods, our body doesn't see that as food. Like it may feel good when you're putting it in your mouth because it's designed to, but our body can't use, I don't care if they're adding stuff back in, like you shouldn't have to add nutrients back into food. It should just have nutrients because it's real. So I love that. And it is such and people don't want to hear it, right? I just had a conversation with a gal yesterday who was really, she's like, I don't want to test that because I don't want to know. And I'm like, well, do you want to feel better? Like, come on. But
I
also
would invite you to want to know, like,
yeah, there's the empowerment. Right. Right. And I love that is a huge difference too. When you're eating real foods and your diet is packed with healthy fats, good, clean proteins and veggies, you don't have that hangry, then you can fast, right? Like that you don't have, I'm not saying, your first go round is going to be easy and or successful, but it is different when your body's not used to being fed all the time and when it's used to being fed. I always say, just think of nature. You've been referring to that, right? Our bodies weren't created to have this surplus and abundance of food around, even if it is real food around us all the time. We shouldn't always be shoving something in our mouth,
Right.
because we didn't find food like that in nature.
Exactly. So our bodies aren't created to have these huge dumps of carbohydrates because carbohydrates are just a bunch of sugars connected. So once we start digesting them in our mouth and in our stomach, they just get broken down into sugar, and that's what we absorb. And so most of us are not using that much sugar for energy when we eat it. We're not training for triathlons and, working out for 2 hours a day. Let's just be honest. Most of us are sedentary. Most of us are at the desk. I'm guilty of that too.
Me
And
too.
so my daughter, who's 13, can get away with eating carbs all day long because she's moving her body constantly.
Yeah.
I cannot do that. Most grown women cannot. And that was one thing that I really took, a lot of time to research and study when I was creating Fast to Faith is how do we eliminate that hangry, jittery, terrible feeling like you can't fast because it doesn't feel good. And what it turns out is we just have to get you into fat burning mode again.
Yes.
We have to remind your body how to burn fat for fuel. And so I love the ketogenic diet for that transition. I'm not saying, go full on ketogenic all the time. Always, my program is set up so that you get into ketosis, you start burning the fat that you're eating, and it reminds your body how to burn fat for fuel. You stop relying on sugar. And then when you take the food away, your body will continue to look for fat to burn. And so you will tap into your own fat stores and start burning your fat for fuel. So you need that little transition. So the program is a progressive fast where you're getting into ketosis, you're getting rid of the snacks, breaking up with sugar, you're shortening your eating window, going a dinner to dinner fast, which is really amazing because then you're starting to get into the repair work. You can do a 3-day water fast, which has been incredible. I've seen women reverse their diabetes and all kinds of issues. And then you learn how to just live a feast, famine, carb cycling life where this is just my life now. And it's so freeing. Like for me, I travel a lot. I don't want to eat the garbage in the airport and on the airplane and all of that stuff. And so my body now knows how to function and go without food for a day. And I can still feel great and amazing, but you have to know how to do it properly. So Fast to Faith has been a game changer for women in that regard.
I love that. And that is the key, the cycling and we weren't meant to do any one thing day in and day out. Like, that's just not how we're designed. And so that is the key. And I see, a lot of people get so stuck on how many hours they're fasting and they get stuck and then they're not feeling well or they're not carb cycling. Right. And but I always did carb cycle, but part of my healing journey, that's why I was excited for this conversation, was, keto and fasting and cyclical keto. Again, I didn't even know, luckily I was just following a program at the time that was right. And so I never got stuck in doing the one thing all the time. But I do believe there is this bit of meant to be guessing. We really want our body to be resilient and to be able to burn sugar when we need to. and burn fat. Like you want it to be able to do both. And it just takes some retraining, but the retraining starts in our brains first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our body has amazing innate intelligence. It is always trying to get into homeostasis.
Yes.
So if you start doing something on a regular basis, it reads those patterns and figures it out and says, oh, now we know how much we have to burn to stay where we're at. And it's not trying to get extreme on you. So if you want to drop 60 pounds, you have to shake things up. You have to change things up. Not go eat in a 16-8 window every day, the same 5 meals all week long, the same 20 workout routine. You are not going to lose weight. Your body knows how to maintain at that place.
Yes.
So you are completely correct. You have to change it up. You have to eat with the seasons. You have to have diversity in your diet and in your exercise and all of that. You have to shake it up. You got to get a little bit drastic sometimes.
I love it. Shake it up. Absolutely. So you're saying even somebody like me, this is safe. This isn't going to, well, first of all, mess with my hormones. Obviously, that's not even, but what about, say,
yeah, can we address that?
Yeah, yes, please.
You don't even have sex hormones, essentially.
Not my own.
Right?
They didn't start in my body. But I do, but yes.
Okay. So you're not producing anymore. So I think a lot of women have this idea, or they've been fed this idea that you can balance your hormones somehow after menopause, or you can replace them naturally. And that's just not true. So our ovaries have a lifespan, and it's unfortunately shorter than the rest of our body. So they do close up factory permanently for good at some point.
Yes.
Our adrenals act like our backup ovaries. So our adrenal glands will continue to produce a little bit of testosterone and estrogen from the DHEA. So you're not completely devoid of sex hormones. You're pretty much devoid of progesterone once your ovaries stop producing, and your estrogen declines drastically. That's why women feel that big shift. They have the hot flashes, the night sweats, the vaginal dryness, all the things. So you never make the same amount of hormones again once you go into menopause.
Even with herbs or seeds?
You can't herb your way into hormone replacement therapy.
Amen.
So I really invite women to have a conversation at this change in their life, because you should have the informed consent. You should have the option to know, I'm either going to go down this full menopause pathway and understand what that looks like long term, or I'm going to consider bioidentical hormone replacement therapy for these reasons. And if you don't have that conversation with a provider who understands hormones, then you're going to be misinformed and you're going to make the wrong decision. And unfortunately, I see this every single day. Women come to my medical practice and say, I was told hormones are dangerous. I didn't go on them. It's been 10 years and now I'm miserable. So the problem is, you might feel okay. You might get through the hot flashes and night sweats. Some women don't even have them. Lucky for them. But your hormones impact your entire body. We have estrogen and progesterone and testosterone receptors everywhere. And so once those levels are permanently declined, the way your body function does change. And so we see the risk of diabetes starts to go up, insulin resistance, cardiovascular disease, bone loss,
Alzheimer's,
dementia,
all of it.
Loss of vaginal health, to the point where women give up being intimate with their partners and they're peeing their pants. They can't hold their bladder. They have, chronic lichen sclerosis or prolapse, and all of these things that come not right away, but later down the line, and no one is addressing them. So there's really two reasons that you consider hormone replacement therapy, and it's for symptom management. Let me get over these hot flashes, night sweats, or I want to slow down the aging and disease process that is impending because of the loss of these hormones. And there's no right answer. It's whatever you're comfortable with, what you and your provider decide. But there are some things like fasting. I've seen so many women like just thrive in menopause without hormones because they fast, they eat clean, they don't eat franken foods, they move their body, they do all that other stuff, but they still have those diseases setting in. They're still having bone loss and cardiovascular disease risk and insulin resistance and all the things. So that's just something that you need to be aware of and be excited that you actually have options in this day and age, and I'm so excited that we're finally getting the truth out there that hormones aren't dangerous, because when I first came into practice, I inherited a very mature practice. The doctor I was replacing was in his 80s. And so he had like delivered these women. They went through menopause. They were up into their 70s and 80s with him, still all on hormones. So it was unheard of. Like I was the only one prescribing hormones where I was, because I had this older population and he didn't believe in I when it came out. And thankfully he didn't, because I learned so much from him. He was like, hormones don't cause cancer. Don't be afraid of hormones. And so I got to see how these women thrive. They're still playing pickleball. They're still having sex. They're enjoying their lives.
Full life.
And then it's totally different than the 70 and 80-year-olds who were 30 years without hormones. And so that impacted me big time. And I really just want women to have the option. I'm not saying get on hormones, but I'm personally on hormones and I can't function without them. I don't apologize for that, right?
I would hand over my wallet in an alley, but not my hormones. Don't take those away. But for me personally, but I love that it's get educated. Find the right provider. I want to add kind of from personal experience. You touched on it earlier too. A lot of OBGYNs or even just GYNs may even think they're trained in hormone replacement therapy. I went through this personally. Love my surgeon. She was my gynecologist for 20 years. She did an amazing job with my surgery. Everything was amazing, And I asked her, I went from fully functional ovaries to no ovaries in the OR. And I asked her post-op in the morning, did you put a patch on, in an estrogen patch on during, in the OR? And she said, no, are you already having hot flashes? And I was like, well, no, it's only been a few hours, and she said, talk to me when you come in for your post-op check, if you're having symptoms. And I thought, well, no, I'll okay. I just said, okay. And I went home and I had some estrogen patches waiting for me when I got home, because I was blessed enough to be prepared. I was already on progesterone at the time. And when I came back for my post-op, she said, you can stop your progesterone. You don't have a uterus anymore. You don't need it. And I just said, okay. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because on her website is all about how she can help women with hormones. But obviously she doesn't have a clear understanding of all of the impacts of hormones. It shouldn't be, you don't get a conversation because you don't have a uterus, right? So do your homework. It's part of the empowerment. Dr. Tabatha is giving you not only the education and the tools, but also the permission to and almost the orders, like be your own advocate. And if you go and have a conversation and something doesn't feel right, it might not be the right provider, even if on their website they say they are. So just understand that when it comes down to it, once you educate yourself on your options, you are the one who needs to make the decisions for your own body. And it doesn't make you, naughty if you don't listen to your doctor and you go find somebody who's a better fit.
Absolutely. And I also want women to understand that there are different schools of thought. So I'm certified by the North American Menopause Society. That is like the preeminent certification for OBGYNs for menopause training, right? So I learned what I learned as an OBGYN. I went on to learn this through NAMS, and NAMS very much follows ACOG guidelines, American College of OBGYNs. And so they're very conventional and they are very, I won't say antiquated, they're catching up, finally changing and updating their recommendations and their standard of care. But that is where the discrepancy and the confusion comes in, because you have this whole camp of health and wellness providers in the functional, integrative, holistic space, anti-aging space, who really understand what hormones are doing, and they're not saying the same things. So
Right.
conventional doctors are telling you progesterone's only for your uterus, estrogen's only for vasomotor symptoms, hot flashes and night sweats. There's dangers with estrogen. You should only take it shortest, time for lowest dose. And none of that is true. That is based on very old, dated evidence that has been debunked. But those committees are very slow to change what they recommend. And so that is why you have so much confusion going on. And I feel very blessed that I get to understand both sides, because I'm part of both camps. So I understand where conventional doctors are coming from and what they were trained. I understand where integrative medicine, anti-aging medicine is coming from. And there's a place to meet in the middle. But like you said, if your provider doesn't want to have a conversation, doesn't know how to test hormones, just tells you, oh, you don't need them, that you should look for another provider. I did a whole podcast episode on like 5 reasons to find a new doctor, because in this day and age, doctors are not paternalistic. They don't just walk in the room and tell you what to do. You should be part of that decision-making process. Not all doctors are created equally, and you pay their salaries, and it's okay for you to say no, thank you, and find someone else. And unfortunately, you might have to go outside of your insurance and pay out of pocket and invest in your health. We need to change the way we think about our health. We pay more to take care of our car and keep our car in good condition. We do the oil changes and the car washes and all the things, but we don't do that for our body. It's like, what? We're just, so we have to like undo a lot of bad thought, honestly.
Yeah. Well, which is what you're helping us do. So I love that. And it is, I say it all the time. My qualifier, I share my life with a physician, right? And there's no bashing. And if I need surgery, I'm going, give me Western. I'm not going for acupuncture if I need surgery.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I do look forward to, I love that you did, you brought up there is change in the works. It's just a really slow process. And I look forward to it. Hopefully I'm still around when, that is just standard of care, that there is this, a deeper understanding of nutrition and lifestyle and hormones and all the things that we think of as functional, integrative, anti-aging, which are just wellness, creeping its way into medical school, for more than like a 3-hour lecture or something. So we're getting there. It's just a slow process, but I truly believe that that's the direction we're moving, and it's doctors like you helping us get there. So thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So we're at the point of the podcast where I get to ask you for one step listeners can take starting today to improve their health, and you can pick from anything you want.
Oh my goodness.
I know it's tough.
Well, yeah, I'm thinking about your listeners, they're most likely autoimmune like I am. Giving up gluten was the best thing I've ever done in my entire life. I will just say that. But I have a method called Faith It that I love to teach women because it's really powerful, and it kind of incorporates the fasting and the faith. And if you use the faith method, you are really getting into a space, because when you fast, you get mental clarity and things start to open up and you can start to have a conversation with your creator. And you want to start journaling and writing down and get clarity on what it is you want in your life and what you don't want in your life. And when you see that, you hear from God and you start to initiate action, so many things can shift. So I love this little hack. It's called Faith, that you can just, look it up on my website. But when you start doing that process once a day, those tiny little changes, they add up to big things, So I would say, get into this attitude of gratitude. Start thinking about, how can I get in tune with my body? How can I listen to my body? How can I hear what God's trying to say for me? And take the time to actually listen and love your body, because you can't heal a body you hate. I've tried. I've been there. I've done that. But you just can't. So try to just love your body and then see, it might actually change. Women are like, what do you mean? You want me to love the body that I hate? Yeah. That is literally the only way to change. You have to treat your body you would your child or your best friend or your partner. Like, you just never would talk to it the way you talk to your body, or treat it the way you would, and so start taking it from that perspective. And if you start getting into this fasting mode, asking God for clarity, writing it down, getting into action, trusting his timing, like that whole faith process can really be a game changer for women. So we can definitely give you a free download on like how to incorporate fasting. That would be super helpful. We have a free app that you can go in. We have recipes. We have a community. Like, we have so much support, because if you feel like you've tried it before and you failed or you didn't feel good on it, I just invite you to try again and maybe just make some tweaks, because I think you might just be missing a couple pieces.
I love that. And for people that are listening on the go and aren't going to check out the show notes, where is the best place to find you?
Just fasttofaith.com. Yep.
So easy. I love it. And all those resources are there. Really cannot encourage you enough to check it out. Dr. Tabatha, I so appreciate not only your time, but just all of the gold you've given us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
For everyone listening, remember you can get those show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.